There are people in all types of prisons, whether you're locked in addiction, whether you're locked in a bad relationship, a bad work environment. I help people escape from all kinds of internal trauma, past trauma. Difference is only a state of mind. Distance is only a perception. And the ability to create impact is only a matter of your heart.
Wow, today I have an amazing messenger on a mission. He's an ambassador of hope. I know that he calls himself a prison success story, but I think when I read his book, Ambassador of Hope, which you are, oh, there we go, that's much better. And you see all the bookmarks for all the things I want to remember to talk about. He helps people stay out of prison. He helps people who are in prison, and he helps those who are working in the prison system to understand what life is really like. And that's leadership, Andre. Your story of going from the orange jumpsuit to Lululemon is just amazing. I know, there he is. He's got to wear it. So welcome, Andre.
Well, I appreciate you having me. And I just want your listeners to know, well, why am I listening to a story about a prison guy? It's not a prison guy. There are people in all types of prisons, whether you're locked in addiction, whether you're locked in a bad relationship, a bad work environment. It's not just a physical penitentiary that I help people escape from. I help people escape from all kinds of internal trauma, past trauma, and current circumstances that are just as confining as prisons.
I love that, Andre. And as I was talking with you before we pressed record, is from the time I joined Genius Network a year ago, and I saw how you were continually showing up. You were on my list when I went to Arizona, like, I want to see Andre. And the first person that I saw when I walked into the reception area was you. You were standing at the staff support desk. And when I told you what I just said, you just put your arm around me and you said, how can I help you? And that's really how you show up. But let's talk about, how did you get there? One of the things that I have bookmarked here is that, well, that's actually a little ahead. Let's not start there. Let's go back to the beginning, because we all are the people. Like I've had traumas in my life, nothing like what you have experienced, but it led me to write my gift book, The Land of I Can. It led me to work with messengers on a mission, because I found what benefit there was in showing up and sharing your pain, your journey in life, so that you can help someone else. So let's talk about how you got to where you are today.
I started out as a young man living in Boston, and we go through a lot of trauma as kids, just regardless of what neighborhood we're from. But I watched domestic violence in my household, mom and dad fighting. I've watched a lot of bad stuff happen in those fights that I couldn't actually save mom from or convince dad not to. And at that age, you don't understand that this isn't happening other places, because you haven't been any place else. You're 5 years old. You only know what's happening in your house. So I'm thinking this is just how life works. And then when I got old enough to go to school, I'm going to school and I go into the world and I run into racism. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and during the 70s, we had a thing called the busing crisis, where Black kids and white kids were being shipped to schools, and the city revolted. And part of the revolts was stoning the buses and throwing names and rocks at the buses. Well, I was one of the kids on those buses, and I went through that process in that time frame, and it was traumatic, to say the least. And the worst part for me was finding out that my father went through the same thing when he was a young boy, and kids would throw rocks and names at him. And when I became 8 years old, I had 3 basic lessons that I had learned. 1, it's okay to hit people, because if my mom can be hit, anybody can be hit. 2, I better protect myself, because when those kids threw rocks and names at me, nobody came to help me. And 3, I can quit anytime I want. My dad and my mom quit and he walked out of the house. So if he can quit, I can quit. And as an 8-year-old, that's my mind frame as I walk into the world, and it's the lens in which I see the world. So school, I can quit. Sports, I can quit. Anything struggling or hard or not easy, I just quit. relationships, I would quit. And I would love to tell you that nobody in my childhood tried to help me. And I grew up in such an evil, awful place that it was just no hope. I had countless teachers, countless counselors, countless neighbors who tried to help me become a better person. I just quit on everything. And when you quit on all things positive, at some point, it only leaves you to negative. And that negative left me in prison at 18 years old with a 100-year sentence.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and you just mentioned the word hope there, that when I read your book, what I thought was, it's fascinating that you had to go through, and this is what happens when we're messengers, is that we have to go through the trauma to really understand the trauma. And for you, there were people who were wanting to give you hope. You didn't have hope in your heart. And yet you've gone through that so that now you are helping others, and to see that there's always hope. And that actually leads me to, and I want you to tell people about what changed for you, being in these maximum prison locations, people being feared. You were feared just if you walked in the room. The prison guards feared you, the inmates feared you. But then you made a change. And what you say here in your book is that it was hard for you to disassociate yourself from the person I'd made myself to the rest of the world. No one remembers Michael Jordan as a baseball player. So you became a king. You became a king within the prison system. And then you had an epiphany, right?
Correct. When I first got to prison, I was taught that there are hierarchies and there's systems, like there's levels. There's the bosses, then there's the guys in the middle, and then there's guys on the bottom. And nobody wants to be on the bottom. And you should never want to be in the middle, in my opinion. You should always want to be on top. So that's my goal. How do I become a leader or a king in this setting? And in that space, in penitentiary and prison world, violence rules. Conversation is nice. Articulation is nice. Resumes don't matter. Violence wins. So people are gauging you based on the amount of violence you participate in and the level in which you participated at. So over the first 6 years of my sentence, when I was in prison, I participated daily in violent acts. I've been charged 8 times with attempted murder. I've been convicted twice of attempted murder on other prisoners. I've been shipped around the country. I've participated in riots on airplanes. They had federal airlifts, and I'm in riots on airlifts. Every day, all day is violence, and to the point I became a king. And I worked hard for that status. I worked really hard for that status, and I achieved it. And once I achieved it, now there's King of Kings. Who's the boss of bosses? I wanted to be that guy. And when I had the opportunity to take the threshold to become the King of Kings, I saw it for what it was. I was going to become the king of nowhere. The number 2 guy never really understands number 1 guy's hassles or problems. He just sees it from the other side of the fence. It's kind of, I equate it to the Wizard of Oz. When Dorothy came to Oz, she marched all the way to the wizard. And when she pulled the curtain back, she saw how fake it was. Mm-hmm. But everybody in Oz was okay with the world being fake. And until Dorothy pulled the curtain back, nobody even questioned it. I pulled the curtain back because I was about to sit in that chair, and I saw it was a fake chair. And I don't subscribe to something that's not real. It didn't bode well with my spirit. I was extremely disappointed because I had such high hopes and expectations and of what this was supposed to be, and it wasn't. And I at Genius this weekend, I forget who it was. Somebody said, if you want something to change, it's not the things that you go through, it's the person that goes through them.
Exactly.
So you got to change you. If you don't like yourself as a rookie, you're not going to like yourself at the end of the year. If you like yourself going in the door, you're not going to like yourself coming. Achievements don't change the person. And I was an unhappy person chasing achievements.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, this doesn't work. And I had to come up with another plan. Because I had one plan, be the King of Kings. Now that I don't want to be King of Kings, I see what it is. I said, what am I going to do next? And I said, well, don't want to be in jail. Prison doesn't work if you can't be crazy. It doesn't make sense. So I said, I want to go home. First, I said, I want to go home. Then I looked around at all the whites, blacks, Spanish, Asian guys who did time. Everybody went home and everybody came back. I said, freedom doesn't work. I don't want to be free because all the free people come here. I said, I want to be successful because successful people don't come here. And I did do successful people go to college. So I said, I'll go home and go to college. I picked a school called Harvard University. I said, I'll go home and go to Harvard. It was literally that simple.
It was simple for you, but it wasn't well received, was it, Andre?
It wasn't. It was hard to be received because other people understood the journey. I didn't understand what it took to get there. I just thought that's why I needed to be.
Yeah.
Other people saw the hurdles. They saw the valleys. They saw the obstacles. I just saw the destination. And I'm like, okay, that's my destination. And I'm not worried about the path or the road. It's just what you have to walk. And I just started walking. And everybody told me I couldn't go to Harvard because I was Black, I was a gang member, I was violent, I got 100 years in prison. They told me all the reasons I couldn't go.
Yeah.
And I said, I know all those things. None of them are reasons I can't go. Those are reasons you believe I can't go, but they're not actual reasons.
Yeah.
Then I went and I made a list of the things that were stopping me from getting there. And being Black wasn't one of them. I couldn't. So not having a GED was one of them. Anger management was one of them. Remorse was one of them. I'm saying touching my internal clocks was one of them. I'm saying I fixed the things that actually stopped me from going, not the things people projected at me.
Yeah.
And it took me 8 years, 20 hours a day of walking this path just to get to step one, and that's out of prison. And it took me another 7 years of walking that path to get my fellowship at Harvard Law School. But it took 15 years from the day I said it to the day I walked in and got my email, anorman@harvard.edu. But I did it. And along the way, worked at the White House. Along the way, London Business School. Along the way, YPO. Along the way, 20 different countries. Along the way, famous speaker. But I never gave up my goal.
And I find again that you said that here during our conversation, and you certainly said it in your book about you were a quitter, but that what you just described is not someone who quits. That was
one of the things I had to fix.
Yes.
When I said, what's stopping me from getting to Harvard? Being a quitter was one of them.
Yes.
I went to counseling. People think counseling is funny. I went to counseling, and during counseling, I discovered, because I didn't know, I was a quitter. And once I fixed the quit gene, then it was nothing I couldn't do.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You are an unstoppable force of hope, Andre. When you were going through the counseling, which is somebody helping you process the things that you learned and maybe look at life a little differently, like the quitting versus commitment. But you also went into some spiritual studies.
Oh.
You went into studying the Bible. You were studying with a rabbi, and I know I love that part of it. And so, tell us how that affected your ability to move forward with such unstoppable force.
Joe Polish has a saying: "Life gives to the giver." In the unit one day, there was a guy getting bullied, tall white guy. I hate bullies. So I saved him from being bullied, and he thanked me. And then he introduce himself. His name was Bob. So me and Bob would cross paths periodically, and he would say hi to me. I'd say hi back. He didn't know I was a top-ranking gang member in this prison. He just said, I'm the guy who helped. And then one day, I'm walking in the program building, and I see Bob. And I said, let me go say hi to Bob. I didn't have to. I could have just kept going. He didn't ever know. I went back, and I said hi to Bob. And Bob introduced me to his friend. I said, what are you doing? He said, we're studying. There was just something about the guy that resonated with me, energy, as we say now. Mm-hmm. I said, well, can I study with you? And he said, cool. And I came and I started studying. It wasn't until somebody else told me that he was an Orthodox Jewish rabbi that I know. Because in my neighborhood, we don't have Orthodox Jewish rabbis. I didn't know what tefillin was. I know what the yarmulke was. The black suit was a black suit. That's what I thought he wore. I didn't know it was part of being a rabbi.
Yeah.
And they're like, what you know with the rabbi? So what are you talking about? He said, the guy that you study with every Wednesday, he's a rabbi. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yes.
He's a teacher.
Exactly.
In my mind, he's a teacher. There was no title. The title he had with me was teacher, not rabbi. and we just kept studying. And he was the most awesome teacher I've ever met. And everything he taught was in love.
Yes.
And I stayed with him, and he taught me, and that became my guy. And so it wasn't about me becoming Jewish. It wasn't about him becoming Black. It was about he had information that was going to better my life, thus better the world. And he gave it to me freely.
And what you just said too, Andre, is so beautiful, because the things that were stopping you wasn't your color. What you just said here is you had a relationship with your teacher, a simpatico give and take, where you were learning, but in your learning, you're also giving back, as the Joe Polish, life gives to the giver. And the fact that someone was a different religion than what you were raised in, or wasn't the same color, those are superficial things, aren't they?
Right. The point of life gives to the giver, the fact that I went back just to say hi to somebody with no expectation of receiving is what created that relationship. Yeah. Had I just said, man, that dude don't count, he ain't nobody, and kept pushing, I'd have missed out on my greatest mentor. So I ask people, how many times have you missed out because you weren't willing to give? Mm-hmm. Or you didn't see the value in return? The ROI wasn't evident on the front end. There was no ROI in my mind of going in and say hi to Bob, other than to be nice to Bob. That's it. The facts, I'm top of the prison chain. Facts, he's the bottom. But he's a person, I'm a person, is how I looked at it. The outside world gave us status points, and I had more points than he did. In my world, everybody's equal. So I can go, he says hi to me, that means I'm qualified to say hi to him. We're equal. And because I did that, I was able to attain one of my greatest advisors ever in life. And that's what people are missing out on. They're looking for the ROI on the front end, mm-hmm. or the status points on the front end.
These conversations with messengers like yourself, Andre, are with people who are a force for good in the world. And while you were in prison, talk about studying with psychologists, studying with your rabbi, you were also studying in the library, and you were studying the law. And in studying the law, that contributed to you being able to lead in less than your 100-year term.
I actually overturned my case on appeal. And what I say to people is the appeal isn't the issue. I wasn't trying to fight my appeal because I believed that I was guilty. I believed I belong here. I believed that I fit. I'm getting along. So I accepted what was and never pushed back. And it wasn't until I had a bigger goal for my own life and a purpose for my own life that I say, well, I need to change this thinking of this is acceptable. So I don't know what relationship you're in or what job you have or what company you run, where you think a certain thing is acceptable just because the masses are doing it. The masses accept it. So I said, let me go teach myself the law, because that's what's keeping me here, along with my attitude. So I challenged the law, which also challenged my attitude of accepting the status quo of, I'm Black, I'm a gang member, I should be locked up. And no, I'm Black, I'm a gang member, but I can still go work at the White House.
Did you ever think way back when, early on in your prison time, that you could ever become the person that you are now, Andre?
No more than Bill Gates thought he was going to run a $1 trillion company, or Steve Jobs thought he was going to take over the world with his electronics. You just go into things, you believe in yourself, you trust that it's going to help people, and you don't understand the magnitude until you get in there. Yeah. And I just said, I'm going to show up in this gift. My mother told me as a kid, if you take 10% of your energy and you apply it to something good, you can change the world. I always thought she was joking. I never took it serious because I didn't believe in the power of me.
And again, that's the messenger journey, because it's the ripple in the pond. You help one person, and then that person goes out and helps two more people. And then one of those two people go out and make a difference in the world, and it magnifies. And it all starts with you just saying hello to a prisoner that's a low totem pole and doesn't get you any brownie points, but you were willing to give. One of the things that I have bookmarked too, because I mean your book is it's beautiful. It's
Tucker Max stuff.
It's a really powerful story. It's so honest and authentic. But you said that when you were changing and that you knew you had to take the mindset of the king and make it line up with the new world that you were trying to inhabit. Otherwise, you'd just be a Polaroid, a picture of the person I was trying to be, instead of actually growing to become that person. That's authenticity right there.
You can't lose yourself in trying to be the next guy. So I use the analogy of Michael Jordan playing baseball. The same energy he played basketball with, he took to the baseball diamond. The same way he approached basketball, he approached baseball. And he was a first-rate, first-class guy in basketball, and he brought that same energy and level, what he could, to baseball. So he brought the best tour bus. They rode on buses, so he got the best tour bus. He didn't try to switch them to planes. And he just brought his energy and view with him. So I learned a lot of lessons as a game leader. Good, bad, and indifferent. I learned a lot of management skills, of interflection, of interceding and conflict resolution and strategy and de-escalation. I learned a lot of skills. It wouldn't make sense for me to drop them all and start over.
No, totally. I mean, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Right.
And you certainly learned leadership skills as the list that all the things that we as leaders in the world, leaders in our business, leaders in the schools, leaders anywhere, certainly in the White House, right? But the leadership skills are all the things that helped you to become king in the prison and now are transferred over into helping those in any leadership. But you also do so much, as you started talking about at the very beginning. You help a lot with Joe's organization around addiction and doing interventions with people. And that's a leadership skill.
Definitely. Joe Polish is real simple and real basic. He's the most connected person on the planet. He's one of the top thinkers on the planet, and he's one of the biggest carers of people on the planet. And we didn't connect on marketing. We didn't connect on advertising. We didn't connect on scale of programs. We connected on helping people. Mm-hmm. My connection to Joe is we both love to help people. And 95% of our conversations about how can we help somebody else? How do we scale humanity? How do we scale support services? How do we actually help people transition into a better space? And spending time with Joe helped me understand how it can be done in a more human way, more humanistic way, holistic way of helping people. And that's what we do. And the folks who know Joe as a marketer or as an advertiser or the head of Genius Network, you know a percentage of Joe. Joe's heart is into helping people. And it transfers into those spaces because wherever he goes, he's still Joe. But he wants to help heal the world. And
yeah, it's really interesting. When I mention Genius Network or Joe Polish to people, they think, oh, it's marketing. And in the 2-3 days that we were together, I don't think I heard any marketing on stage.
You don't remember the marketing, but it was there.
It was there. Yeah. But I mean, it wasn't like here's a 1 hour process on direct response. Here's a 1 hour on how to do a YouTube video. It was more what you're sharing right here is the real inside stories of how to make a difference for yourself, how to make a difference for your family, how to make a difference in the world.
You make a better business person and they'll influence the world. Mm-hmm. Because businesses and entrepreneurship runs the world. This is a capitalistic world, even if they have communist views. There's a business someplace. Somewhere in that middle, somebody's working and turning out some widgets or something. And that's what's running whatever the country is. How you divide the money up is philosophy. But there's a business running someplace. And business people govern and direct how this world goes. So Joe wants to build a better entrepreneur holistically. And that person who employs 5, 10, 20,000 people, or even 5, 10 people, will change the world. You get people who have lists of 10, 20, 30,000 people. You go to my rabbi and you say, hey, I got this agency and it helps 10,000 people a year. He says, well, I only got one guy. Well, who's your one guy? My one guy's Andre. Who's your 10,000? And not to compare me to 10,000 people, but are the people you're helping creating impact?
Well, you made an impact, and I can't remember if it was in the prison or in the juvenile detention area, but you noticed an empty classroom. Where was that? And
That was
what
at
is
the prison.
that was
That
at
was
the
at the
prison.
prison where I was actually working on the manuscript for the book. And I used to go to the school every day and use the computer to type my book up. And I turned to the teacher one day and said, how come nobody's in here? She said, they don't come. I said, do you want them? And she said, yes. I walked down and saw the principal. I said, do you want them? He said, yes. Then I walked to the orientation unit where there was probably like 500 guys. I said, took the microphone off and said, who doesn't have their GED? 1 o'clock, I made them all come to the desk, put their name on a list, and I told the CO, you send them to the school at 1 o'clock. Then I walked out. Then the guys who don't know me, like, yo, who's that guy? And the guys would tell me, you got two choices. Go to the school at 1 o'clock or you're going to get stabbed because he runs this prison.
Yeah.
They're like, okay. So then I walked back to the school and I got the principal. I said, you got 100 guys coming at 1 o'clock. You better teach them. The
Yes.
same way I told them they better show up. I told him, you better teach them.
You made the connection because, again, going back to Genius Network and Joe, the part of the giving is the connection that like you and I have right now, even though it's over Zoom and you're on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, but we're connected here in this moment. But you connected the people that needed to have the classroom full with the people who needed to be in the classroom. And you did it on both sides.
Yes. Then the key thing is that people often miss, get out the way. Once the connection is made, then my job is to get out of the way.
Yeah. And do you realize how many people, I mean, I can't even imagine how many people you helped just by doing that connection.
When the entire, I was in that prison probably almost a year and a half. And for a year and a half, when I first got there, the GD room was empty. 100% empty, 99% of the time. Once we had that first intervention, it stayed full the rest of the time. And the concept of going to GED class became acceptable because the gang leaders or the different people on the yard, the shot callers, weren't letting their people go to school. But once I bridged that and we started having their people go to school, it became accepted. And it became part of the institutional code for gangs that you can go to school. And not just you can go, but it was a neutral zone. There's no gang fights inside of the school because when I was there, it was a neutral zone. I made it a neutral zone. There wasn't gonna be any gang fights while Andre's handling his business. So it became that and it stayed that.
Mm-hmm. And then you also did outreach. You were invited to go to schools and talk with I'm not sure what the age level was. Was it elementary?
I go from K1 to grad school.
Okay. And you tell them the real story of what it's like to be a gang member and end up in jail. Not the TV version.
We don't do scared straight. I don't yell at anybody. I don't tell them graphic stories. It's more of, because young kids in trouble think going to jail is cool. So I ask them, the question that they have is, can I survive in jail? Well, I'm tough enough to be in jail. Will I be bold enough to make it through jail? I'm saying you're asking the wrong question. This is Dan Sullivan, Class 101. The question isn't, can you make it? The question isn't, are you tough enough? The question is, do you want to be there? You're asking the wrong question. The question I want you to ask is, do you want to spend 10 years locked in a cage? Not can you. Do you want to? Then the answer is often no. Then let's work on that. Because if you say, hey, am I tough enough to make it? Then the answer is no. And it's like, let's get tougher. So no. I help them understand the question because they're asking the wrong question. The same question I ask, am I tough enough to make it? Not, do I want to go? Mm-hmm. When you change that one question, you change the whole dynamic of the approach of what you're teaching and helping this child with. Yeah. Because they're trying to get tough enough to survive versus get deeper understanding of how not to go.
Yeah. And then you also found when there were people who were very wealthy, had anything that money could buy, but they weren't happy. and their children were not getting any more attention from them than you did in the poor section of Boston. And that was an eye opener for you, wasn't it? That
I thought white kids had it made. I just knew, because I grew up watching the Partridge Family, Leave It to Beaver, Brady Bunch, 90210. These white kids had a great life. Yeah. And that's what I see, because there was no white kids in my neighborhood. So the only white kids I know are the kids I see on TV. And their lives look phenomenal. Now, when I went to an all-white school, it wasn't the TV life that they were living. They were living with bullies. They were living with drug addiction. They were living with parents that didn't care, divorce. They were living with trauma. They just did it in a nicer house. That's all. Trauma is trauma. And I look now at adults who have taken their lives, millionaires. People just say, I don't live anymore. Yeah, I have millions of dollars, the #1 TV show or retail store that's phenomenal, but I don't want to live anymore. Mm-hmm. Finances don't heal internal wounds.
Yeah.
You just hurt in a bigger building.
Yeah. And because you were doing this outreach, one of the things that you wrote here is that you became a storyteller by force.
When I first came home, I didn't know motivational speaking was a job first. So I came home from prison. I went to a juvenile center, and there were 30 kids in the room. And I told them my story, and they all clapped. And they said, Dre, will you come back tomorrow? So I came back the next day, and it's the same 30 kids. So I had to tell them something other than my story. Then like 30 days later, I had become a master storyteller by default, because these kids wanted to be engaged, entertained, inspired, and I couldn't tell them the same story 30 days in a row. So I learned how to tell stories that were engaging and inspiring, uplifting. And if a 13-year-old can sit and listen to you instead of going to gym, you're good.
Absolutely. I mean, just to get their attention in these times. I mean, when you and I were growing up, and you're younger than me, but we didn't have all these devices that were changing, our attention on moment by moment. So yeah, for you to do that, Andre, and to have them want you to come back, because you're a great storyteller.
If you can tell stories to kids in detention for 30 days straight, same kids, and not have to tell the same story, you're good. And
that's a master class.
Yeah, it turned into a master class for me, because I didn't know. I had my one story of going down, coming up, and starting over. They heard that on day 1. So from day 2 to day 30, I had to come up with something different.
Yeah. And in the business adult world and outside of prison, you told a story at the Genius Network that I thought was really phenomenal. And it was about how you went to a city, and there was a successful man in that city who you felt was calling you because he had to. Do you remember the story that you told? You called him, and he was expecting your phone call, but he didn't really connect with you, and you felt like, oh, he's just doing this because this was a favor. Do you know the story I'm talking about?
You have to tell me.
Okay, but then like he's brushing you off. He was brushing you off, and at the close of the conversation, you said, "Is there anything I can help you with?"
Oh no, okay, that's my guy, Mike Burnoff. When
okay.
I came to Phoenix, and my buddy called and said, "I'm going to introduce you to people while you're in town." So I said, "Okay, fine." So he called a bunch of people and said, "Hey, my guy Andre, sometime when you meet with him." Michael Burnoff was actually one of those people. Mike called me to say he didn't have time to meet with me, but maybe next time. The polite call.
Exactly.
I said, no problem. But I got a question. I said, is there anybody I can help? He said, what do you do? I said, I do interventions. He said, well, matter of fact, and he took me to a 15-year-old who I was able to help, and life gives to the giver. I offered something with no expectation in return. I never met Michael Burnoff, didn't know who he was, didn't know who he was connected to. Can I help somebody? And that, I went to go help that one child, and Mike says there's a guy that does this from the same as you, and he connected me to Joe.
Yeah. I love that story, because how many people in whatever environment, whether it's a business environment or a connection like was happening there, that you accept no, like, well, I can't see you this time, but maybe next time. And a lot of people would be like, okay, bye.
Well, I accepted the no. I didn't expect him to come with me. I
Mhm.
was like, cool, you can't come, no problem. But I had some free time. Is there anybody I can help that you know about?
Yeah,
He could have just sent me to the YMCA and I'd have gone.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
turn, he came with me, and he's one of my greatest champions and best friends to this day. So shout out
Wonderful.
to Mike Burnoff and Deborah Burnoff. You know what I'm
There you
saying?
go. There you go. Wonderful. So I didn't remember the names, but I remembered the story. And isn't that the truth with the stories? Stories stick with us and we
Stories.
remember them. And especially when they're real stories.
Oh yeah, Mike's a real guy.
Yeah.
And I believe Mike's one of the greatest trainers, influencers going around. I mean, I went to his training one time, and he said, "Hey, Dre, come on out, come to my training." I said, "Cool." It's in Phoenix, Scottsdale. So I said, "I'll go." And I was going to go see Joe Polish. I was going to go see Michael Fishman. I had a list of people I was going to go hang out with. And I got to the hotel and I looked at the schedule. It's from 8 in the morning to 10 at night, 4 days in a row. I said, you got to be crazy. I'm not sitting in this room for 12 hours, 14 hours a day. I can never do that.
Yeah.
I got ADHD. I got sugar problems. I can't sit still.
Yeah.
I said, this is not going to work. So I'm thinking I might make it a half a day or a day, then I'm just going to excuse myself. I sat, it started and ended just like that. It was over before I could blink.
Wow.
4 days, 13, 14 hours like that. Best training I've ever done, bar none.
Wonderful. Wonderful. You know, I love those surprises that life gives us, that when we're willing to show up, even if you're thinking, I can't stay for the whole thing, but I'll come for what I can. So you were willing to show up and then accept what was being brought to you. And it sounds like it was quite a gift.
When it ended, after 4 days or 14-hour days, whatever it was, people didn't want to go to their rooms. They stayed there. He had a room set aside because he already knew where the entire conference went to this room and stayed up until like 4 in the morning. Just talk. Nobody wanted to go to bed.
Wow. That's amazing. I think I have to look into that.
Listen, my whole staff, we do prison work, we do gang outreach, we do interventions. My whole staff has been on Michael's calls, and I've sent a lot of my staff to the in-person stuff. Life-changing.
Wonderful.
Life-changing.
Wonderful. And talking about life-changing, you are touching so many different people in different walks of life with the skill sets that you learned the hard way, and then decided to take those skills and turn it into a force for good. What's your number one project right now? What's mostly important to you? Because I know you've got a big prison outreach, but what's your number one?
My number one project right now is there's 2.2 million people in prison. And right now, technology has caught up to prison somewhat. So the prisoners have tablets. It's called an iPad. And they can watch movies, they can do games, they can do music, they can do educational stuff, they can read books. I had a gentleman call me this morning and he donated his book. It's a best-selling how to get started in finance. He's donating the book. I can put it on the platform and 500,000 inmates will be able to read his book next week for free. Jason Campbell is donating his meditation. I can put it on the platform, 500,000 inmates, men and women, white, black, Spanish, Asian, everybody can access his meditation skills for free. So the biggest thing I'm working on right now is collecting stuff that I can actually put on this platform for folks in jail. And I tell them there's no conflict. It's a prison-based system. So if you gave me your book or your video, your training or course, I can put it on the platform. It's a secure server. There's no interface with the internet, YouTube, Kajabi, or Teachable. It's strictly in the prison. And if somebody took the tablet and jumped over the wall, it wouldn't work because it's only programmed to that server. But through Genius, countless members have donated books and trainings and materials because oftentimes, if not every time, prisons get the worst of the worst, the cheapest of the cheap, the most non-functioning trainings and books that you can imagine. Now I'm bringing them the best of the best. And if we want better people, we have to give them better material.
Yeah. And how could people reach you? Andre, if they have books or courses or music that they would like to share with
Send me an email.
the system.
Just, you can send me an email, and we'd love to have it. What they would do is just give me permission to put it on the platform.
Okay.
So if it's a video series, if it's a written series, if it's a book, if it's a course, we have ability to launch all of those. If it's all written, if it's all video, if it's half 50-50, whatever it is, we can put it on there.
So I will drop your email into the text description of this video, if that's acceptable for you.
That's great.
And people can find you that way.
And if you don't have a book, a video, a course, but you have like a wonderful message, we can do this. We could actually take this whole interview. After you're done, take the podcast and load it up onto the platform, and the 500,000 people see it. So it doesn't have to, if you don't have anything tangible, we can do an interview geared towards whatever message you want to send inside, and we can do that.
You know, we may do another one then. We may do something around my book, The Land of I Can. Because in The Land of I Can, we go through apathy, where things just don't matter anymore. The land of fear, where sometimes you're frozen and you just can't move forward. The land of sorrow, where there's losses for the prison, maybe loss of freedom. But for me, it was loss
hold it right there. You don't have to make it fit prisoners. See, the prisoners are people. What happens is people believe that they have to reshape it to make it fit them. I did a speech in London to Deutsche Bank in 2001. I walked in a room, dressed, all these guys are in suits, they're in $1 billion company, and I'm like, I'm out of place. I walked in, I asked them, I said, what's the best thing I can do to make this experience good for you? They said, Andre, don't talk to us in banking terms. Tell us your story and trust that we're smart enough to draw the lines. Yeah. So I just need your audience to come in and tell their story and trust that the people are smart enough to draw the lines of what matters to them.
Yeah, I do remember that story was in your book. So thank you for the reminder.
Yeah. Don't try to talk in prison terms. Tell your story, share your information, and trust that they're smart enough to draw the lines.
Yeah.
Because think about it, I used to be in there. So I would be listening to your stuff, and the biggest insult or the biggest turnoff is when you try to talk like in prison terms. I'm like, she doesn't know anything about this life.
And you're absolutely right.
Be authentically 100% you, and I can resonate, and I take the parts that are good. But when you try to contort yourself to be like me, now you're out of position.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. Thank you for that. And talking about people who have messages, and for me, my message is that you can take what your life struggles are, you can take the unique experiences that you have had in your life, and you can make a difference with that. And of course, I love to help people write their book. You already have your book, but I find it, which you also mentioned, is that there are a lot of unhappy people who think they've climbed the mountain of success and this is going to make them happy. And now they're just rich and unhappy. And they're still the same people. And so when I can help somebody find their purpose, to find what will light them up, and whatever lights them up is going to light other people up, and we shine a light force for good, what would your one message be that you would want to share from this conversation?
The one message is difference is only a state of mind. Distance is only a perception. And the ability to create impact is only a matter of your heart.
Love that. Love that. You are just one big love bug, I got to tell you.
I mean, stop creating barriers where they don't exist.
Yeah.
We make things mean something that really mean nothing.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as distance.
Yeah. Just like us, we're in the same room together right now.
I mean, my grandmother's no longer with us, but she's still with me.
Yes.
Distance is conceptual.
Yeah.
You can, in your mind, make it far, or in your mind, make it close.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. You're beautiful. Thank you so much, Andre, for being here. Again, I'll put your email contact information in the show notes so that anybody who can help with a message, help to get information, books, courses into the prison system, and you can do that for them and make a difference in the world.
And it's 100% free to the prisoners. We're not selling them anything. Whatever you give me is going to be just cut and pay, put up, electronic versions of books, courses. We can reload them. We're not changing the word, and it's free for the prisoners. And if we want better people, we got to give them better material. Now, everybody can't come to genius, but we can bring genius to them.
Yes, that is a genius idea. So thank you so much, Andre.
That's an elegant idea.
Yes. Thank you
And-
so much. Thank you again for being with me here today, Andre. And I am going to talk with you about a second interview.
Set it up. We're going to do the second interview. I'm going to create it. You got me thinking. I'm going to create a podcast interview setup just for the people who want to come on and just do interviews.
Yes.
I'm going to create. I think they got this thing called StreamYard where I can do the whole thing, set it up.
Yeah.
And just do StreamYard and just go boom. And we can just start doing podcasts with real people who care.
Yes.
You just want to get on and say, yo, guys, I love you. I wish you the best. It doesn't have to be anything like supernatural. Just be real.
Yes. Yep. Authenticity will always win.
Yes, it shall.
Talking from the heart. Thank you again.
Thank you.